Yes, sir.
Governor, doctors in the state say that these surgeries are not being performed in Mississippi. Is this a preventative action, or are you under the belief that they are happening?
It's interesting to me because we've had a lot of different arguments made about this particular bill over the last 6 months. Over the last 6 weeks. And if we want to take the position that, hey, we're just doing this on a preventative basis, and therefore because we don't want it to happen in our state, then that's fine for us to say that, and I'm willing to take this as a victory if that's the case. But what's been ironic to me is that over the last 6 weeks, the opponents of this legislation started by saying, if we pass this bill, young children are going to die. Over the last few days, the argument has shifted, and the opponents are saying, well, this hadn't been happening anyway, so why on earth would you pass a bill to prevent something that this hasn't happened anyway? The fact is, you can believe one of those two things, but you can't believe both. You cannot believe both. But what I can tell you is going forward, if any of these procedures were to occur on a kid that's under the age of 18, they are violating the law. Now, I know Matt was very involved with respect to some conversations at Vanderbilt, and I think it would be helpful if he gave his perspective on this as well, if you don't mind.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I think on the question of whether or not it's happening, the first thing to always keep in mind is that you're relying on these medical institutions to be honest about what they're doing and to report the data honestly, and there's just no reason to have that kind of faith. Remember, we're dealing with people that mutilate kids for money, so not exactly the most trustworthy. But what we do know is that a few things. Number one, if it happens to one child who's mutilated, castrated, drugged, it's way too many. It would be worth a law in every state to prevent this from happening to one child. It's happening to a lot more than one. We also know that where the trend is heading right now. You know, if you go back 10 years ago, this was almost unheard of. And since then, there's been this exponential increase in children being diagnosed with gender dysphoria year over year, and then children being, quote unquote, treated with these drugs, which really are, again, chemical castration, mutilation drugs. So if you say right now, well, look at the number of kids, it's not that many. I don't know how anyone could possibly say it's not that many, considering what's happening to them. You also have to look at the trends and where it's heading, and where we've been and where we are now. And that's why if we don't pass laws now to stop this, check back in 5 years, check back in 10 years. That's why I say now is the time to pass these laws and to protect the kids who have not had this happen to them yet.
Yes, sir.
Governor, on what you mentioned earlier where those two ideas conflict, I believe they were talking about surgeries are not happening, but the hormone therapies were for 16 years and older. But for those students that are, those teens that are getting those services or have been getting those services, they won't go in going forward, they were saying to me that that's helped them be more self-confident. It's helped them avoid suicide because they felt more self-confident in who they were. What do you think this could mean for those students or people who will no longer have an option to either even delay their puberty so they could address it later down the line?
Yeah, what I would say is this law is clear. It is the law of the land in the state of Mississippi that if you are under the age of 18, that neither those surgeries nor those drugs altering behavior will be allowed in Mississippi going forward. I don't think that there's any doubt that that we as a state and we as individuals, and particularly those of us in the faith community, have to continue to do more. We have to continue to do more with respect to those babies that are born out of wedlock. We have to continue to do more for those individuals, for those moms who find themselves in unplanned or unwanted pregnancies, particularly in a post-obs world. And I think we've got to continue to find solutions as a state to help those individuals, regardless of their age, whether they're 14 or 16 or 18, that are struggling in life with mental issues, that we're there for them as well.
Yeah, please. I would also note as well that what you'd mentioned about it prevents suicide. There is no good data to back that up whatsoever. In fact, the best long-term study that's been done on this shows that suicidality for trans people is the highest years after the so-called affirmative care. But the main issue is that there really aren't that many credible, reliable long-term studies. Well, why is that? Well, the answer is that we haven't done this to kids on this kind of scale ever before in history. And so this group of children right now, they are the lab rats. We're experimenting on them. And so anytime you hear from medical authorities that, well, we know that it prevents suicide, what they're telling you is that they think it does, they assume it does, they claim it does. They couldn't possibly have the evidence for it, because to have the evidence for it, they would need to be able to point to thousands of kids who were transitioned 15 years ago, and let's check back in with them and see how they're doing now. We just started doing that at this scale recently, and it's also just it also defies common sense as well. The idea that not only does it defy common sense, but I find it frankly grotesque that the way to stop a child from tragically hurting themselves is to affirm their belief that there's something wrong with their body, that they were born in the wrong body, that they're the wrong person. No, the way to help anyone who's in despair in that way, especially a child, is to help them towards actual self-acceptance, who you really are. So if you're a biological male and you're a boy and you're 15 years old and you feel like you're a girl, the message should be, no, you're a boy, and that's a wonderful thing to be who you are. And we will help you to accept that, because it's wonderful to be who you are. This is who you are. That should be our message. Instead, the message they get from the medical community is, well, oh, okay, if you feel like you were born in the wrong body, then you were, and we'll start chopping pieces of you off until the bad thoughts go away. And I just find that to be utterly horrific and insane on its face.
Scott?
Governor, the Jackson mayor has been on several national programs lately, calling the attempts for expanding the capital improvement district and other measures as being racist, an attempt to undermine black leadership and to protect the most whitely, densely populated portions of the city of Jackson. Can you address that, or do you care to?
Well, there's no doubt that that there are certain leaders in the city of Jackson that make claims of racism anytime anyone points out their downfall in leadership and their lack of responsible actions, their unwillingness to take responsibility for the plight of this city. I've lived in the city of Jackson for somewhere between 15 and 20 years of my life. The city of Jackson has great potential, but there are a few things that cities have to do to ensure that they are vibrant. And one of the core functions of government is to ensure public safety. Now, I said from this podium the last time I gave a press conference, and perhaps I was wrong. I said that Jackson was the murder capital of the world. I was attacked for saying that because they believe that I got it wrong, because there are 3 cities in other countries that have a higher murder rate than Jackson. There are no other cities in the United States that have a higher per capita murder rate than the city of Jackson. And so there are those in the city, and they are residents that are begging for help. They're begging for the state's help for law and order. We know that the Jackson Police Department has some good individuals who work there. We also know that there's just far too few of them. And so when we as a state saw our capital city struggling with crime, we set up the Capital Complex Improvement District. We've invested millions of dollars annually in a police force. And while some of the city's elected leaders do not like that, do not like the fact that the state is spending millions of dollars on law enforcement, and that if a crime is committed inside the district, those individuals who commit that crime are going to get arrested. I can tell you from experience that there are an awful lot of people who live here who really do appreciate it. They appreciate the fact that the Capitol Police shows up when they are called. They appreciate the fact that if a crime is committed, Capitol Police is there to assist the victims and to find the criminals. And so I couldn't be prouder of the work that the Capitol Police is doing inside the city limits. There's legislation in various chambers and various areas with respect to how we take the next step. I told you when I was here a week or so ago that House Bill 1020 and the conversation surrounding that is being led by individuals that maybe don't have the bill perfect yet. It's had a lot of changes over the last several weeks in trying to get it more perfect and to make it a better bill. But I will tell you that I thought from the time that it was introduced in the House to the time that it actually passed the House floor, there was a lot of really good improvements made. The bill that was amended in the Senate, I thought took a pretty big step back towards just sending money to the same entities and institutions that exist now, and I don't think that's the right approach. But again, it's a process, and the process is members of the House, members of the Senate are trying to improve the bill, and I'm hopeful that they get something to my desk that I can agree to and that we can sign so that we can make sure that we are giving the Capitol Police the resources they need to help ensure law and order in what can be a great city.
Is it fair to suggest that it undermines black leadership in the capital city?
I don't think so, Scott. I think that if the leadership in the city wants to invest in the Jackson Police Department, I think that'd be a great thing for them to do. If they want to invest in the court system, I think that'd be a great thing to do. The state certainly has done that over the years. We have put money in the Capitol Police. We put money during last session in helping the Hinds County District Attorney hire more prosecutors. The legislature and with my signature put more money in helping ensure that the Chief Justice could appoint special judges. That's one of the ironies of the arguments being made now is we have special judges inside Hinds County today, special judges that are help clearing the docket for those elected leaders. Oh, by the way, we also have inferior courts in jurisdictions all over Mississippi, those who have white leaders, those who have black leaders. This issue is not about race. It's about curtailing crime and making Jackson have the opportunity and the potential that we need it to have so that we can bring businesses back to Jackson, so that we can bring people back to Jackson. Because make no mistake, while we may disagree on how we get there, Mississippi needs a vibrant and successful capital city. And with the crime wave that has occurred over the last several years, it makes it really difficult to do that. And so I commend those that are trying to find solutions, and I look forward to seeing what kind of bill gets across the finish line, and hopefully it's one that I can support. Yes.
If a trans child needed to go on puberty blockers for a reason like precocious puberty, but the blockers would also have the effect of being gender-affirming care, will that now be permitted under the bill?
I don't believe that's allowed under the bill. I do not.
You said that the Senate version of House Bill 1020 was a step back. If that was the version that reached your desk, could you support it?
Well, again, while we're 2 months into the session, I don't think that will be the version that reaches my desk. I think as it has been changed and amended multiple times over the last 2 months, it's likely to continue to be amended. It's out of committee. It's on the floor, I believe, in the Senate. And it has been changed, so it is therefore by definition will go back to the House of Representatives. Highly likely that goes into conference. and I'm hopeful that that a bill gets to me that I can sign, and I don't think it'll be that one. Yes, Cornelia.
What do you say to opponents of 1125 who say that it seems to them to be a disconnect between your support of parental rights and this cutting off of their parental medical decision making?
What I would tell you is I do not believe that kids under the age of 18 should be allowed to enter into surgeries that are, in essence, mutilation. I don't believe that kids under the age of 18 should be allowed to have these puberty-blocking drugs because I think what we're ultimately going to find, as was mentioned earlier, is that the long-term consequences and the long-term effects of those kids doing that are going to be far greater than any short-term effects of what some may argue are positive, but I see no argument for that. So you want to touch that as well?
Sure. On the parental rights bit, I think that, I mean, really it's a simple answer that we believe in parental rights, I believe in parental rights, but you don't have the right to directly harm your child. You know, child abuse is against the law in every state, as well it should be. And even if parents are, you know, I think in some cases parents themselves are being duped by the medical establishment and then in a sense become victims as well. But whatever it is that motivates it, if you're sending your kid in to be chemically castrated and sterilized, you are harming your child, and you shouldn't be allowed to do that under the guise of parental rights or under the guise of anything else. I would also say, too, that you know, no matter what adults say, and no matter what adults approve of a child undergoing these kinds of treatments, those adults don't have to live with it. You know, a young girl is getting double mastectomy, a boy's being chemically castrated, someone's being sterilized. You know, children are having the ability in the future when they're adults to have children of their own being taken away from them. Well, that's a burden that they're going to have to bear on their own. Which is yet another reason why we need to step up as adults and protect them.